Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Dagan McDowell, along with my co-host Taylor Riggs, Jonathan Hoenig, Jeff Flock, and with us for count 'em hours, Fox Business contributor. Look at that! Congratulations, Louis Basenese.
Thank you.
I missed that yesterday, by the way. It has been a great year for investors galore. Not as great for anybody who sold America after Liberation Day. Take a look at the major market gauges since that panic on April the 2nd. Yowza. Look at the NASDAQ composite go. And, of course, the artificial intelligence craze, big tech stocks dominating this year. The Magnificent Seven, Broadcom now make up 40% of the S&P 500. 2025 was also good to the Russell, the Dow Transports. All of kind of the big market indicators were positive for the year in showing double-digit gains, and you see the significant plus signs on the Russell, small caps, and then the Dow Transports there. I told Lou before we started the show, tell me something I don't know, Lou.
Yeah, so what you don't know is Wall Street. Although the president's saying drill, baby, drill, and Wall Street strategists are saying oil could go all the way down into the 30s or 40s, is that the smart money is actually positioning themselves for an oil rally. If you look at Exxon, this is the tell. ExxonMobil's up 11% year to date and 22% off the April lows, because everyone knows that is tuned into the energy markets that you can't hang out here at $55 to $60 prices per barrel. You have to get into the mid-60s to 70s, because if you look at it, Permian Basin, our most prolific basin in the United States, rig counts are down 30% this year, completed wells are down 20%. That means down the road, we can't even keep up with the production that we're putting out. So this is a contrarian call. It's the most hated sector in the market. It's the only one that didn't go up anywhere last year. But I'm telling you, it's the cheapest on an absolute and relative basis. Back half of 2026, I think you see a boom in oil prices and that whole sector.
Nature of inflation, their inflation is lower because their economy sucks.
The fact of the matter is you would have made more money investing in international stocks than domestic stocks year to date. End of story.
But that doesn't tell me about next year.
Yeah, so I would tell you structurally, international markets are not set up for a repeat. You have slower GDP growth on average. They had a one-time anomaly where President Trump forced them to actually spend on defense again. So that boosted that entire industry, particularly in Germany, across the European Union. I don't think those things repeat themselves. I'm not alone here either. A much smarter guy, Mohammed El-Arian, was out saying the same thing, that there was a unique setup for international markets to outperform in 2025. That setup, I don't believe either, is there in 2026.
If stocks have run up so much, then you should reallocate. You should reduce.
Well, in a 401k account, you don't have to worry about it because it's tax advantage. But once a year, you should rebalance. You should have your targets. Hey, I'm going to have 20% in large cap stocks, 10% in small cap. I think this time of year, you rebalance into small value, international value. You have a focus on value, small and mid cap, because those have underperformed. And it's just tactical, but you're right.
Or even rebalance into fixed income.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I have. Yeah, I've done a lot of that.
And that dollar weakness does give you sort of that artificial boost on profits. So come at me, you guys, like this a little bit weakness dollar, but stable, because of just sort of the environment that it sets us up for next year.
I can't disagree with it. I mean, Larry Kudlow was saying it maybe a couple of weeks ago when we were all on together, that Scott Bessent should be out defending the dollar to provide some of that stability. That's that verbal intervention to kind of talk the dollar up. To your point, the S&P 500, about 38% of profits on revenues come from overseas. So it has international exposure already embedded in it. So you benefit from that currency translation on coming back. Yeah. So, but I think more importantly, and you probably can speak to this as well, you have to make sure you have exposure to multiple markets. You can't just be only USA. The trade at the beginning of the year was anywhere but the USA. It should never be one thing. You should be diversified across markets.
If you look at, say, the Qs, the NASDAQ 100, it peaked late October. It's down almost 3% since then. Is that telling us something about tech and the economy in the new year? Because the weakness has been in some of the AI names.
Yeah, so I look at it from where do we start the year at valuations, where do we end the year? Right around 29 times for tech companies. So we're back right where we started. So I'm not looking at the recent weakness, but I think it's natural for profit taking end of the year. I don't buy the indexes. When I look at tech, I'm looking for small, mid cap, or small or large cap names, individual securities. So I'm not looking for a huge rollover.
And I'm happy to hear you mention things like value, things like small cap. I mean, today's investors have basically forgotten about them.
Pop quiz, best top stock in the S&P 500. And you know this. You can't answer this, Jonathan. Sit out.
Wait,
I won't say anything.
You all heard it? Western Digital. Guess how much? By what percent?
North of 200.
Yeah, 290% this year.
And this is basically an AI play, an AI storage play.
So was Micron Technology, also up 240% on the year. So really, Dagan, it was like in Seagate's in there. It's chip makers, it's AI. To the opposite end of that, I want to pull up the losers, and you guys can weigh in on all of this. In the S&P 500 trade desk, down.
Ouch.
I had 68%. Yep, Pfizer, and then Alexandria Real Estate Equities was down 49. Now about 50%. Your thoughts?
I'm not surprised to see real estate at the bottom there. I don't know much about Alexander specifically. Trade desk, I think it's a super competitive market right now. I would not want to be in the brokerage business whatsoever. You got rid of your engine of revenue by getting rid of commissions, right? So you have to find other ways to generate that. Again, I would tell people, I don't look at winners and losers and try and buy the bottom for a bounce and go whole hog into the winners too. But I do think Micron still very, very undervalued. Western Digital still has legs because high bandwidth memory is now the missing ingredient for a lot of this AI. So at first it was the processing chips. Now we need the memory to store all that data going back and forth. So still, I think that trend plays out in 2026.
And 40% of the S&P market cap is in the Mag 7 stocks?
Yep.
Is that unusual?
It's very unusual.
Yeah.
We haven't seen it anything higher unless we go back to the railroad days where they accounted for 61% of the stock market.
Interesting.
Be defrauded from the American people by these individuals who run these states, and it's everywhere.
Well,
but what you said, what did Wall
It gets me,
say?
yeah. I mean, he tweeted out, this is Trump's long game. We spent years cracking down on fraudsters. It's a serious issue, but this has been his plan all along. He's politicizing the issue to defund programs that help Minnesotans. What's his plan all along? To let you run a huge fraud Ponzi scheme to fund Somalis and then call you out on it? I mean, here's what strikes me. You're making this a political issue. It's a forensic one right now. This is akin to, you notice an errant charge on your credit card.
Yep.
Do you just say, hey, let me just see what happens. Let me see if there's any other charges? No. You call, you freeze the account, and you get to the bottom of it, which is exactly what the federal government is doing.
I'm wondering where else this is going on.
California,
Everywhere.
I mean, everywhere. This is what I said yesterday is in accounting, in public company accounting, whenever you find an irregularity and start digging in, it never gets better. It gets
and
worse.
is this just one?
No,
right?
It's the cockroach theory. Where there's one, there are thousands.
The state auditor found California didn't bolster its fraud detection efforts until months into the pandemic, and almost $33 billion was stolen because of it.
Yeah.
That they're they will lie and try to make Trump the problem when they're the grifters.
Well, it brings you back to, why did Elon Musk get run out of Washington, D.C.? Because he started digging in and finding where the bodies were buried on both sides indiscriminately. There's a lot of fraud, abuse, waste going on. The question is, what's the catalyst to actually get to a solution, right? You mentioned it. It was always a focus on speed of spending. How do we get this money allocated and out there as opposed to the outcomes? Because think of all the good you could do for the underprivileged and the children if there wasn't all this waste. There'd be a lot more money to actually have good outcomes.
That's the argument, is that if you actually cared about the kids, you would get rid of the fraud, waste, and abuse, because then it would actually help the kids who need it. We love promises. Reality is a different story. There were rumors a couple months ago, Kathy Hochul's already poo-pooed the idea of the free buses. A lot of things have to go through her approval. For the sake of my city, I'm rooting for its success. Let's hope that the reality meets the road and level heads prevail. I am hopeful that Hochul and upstate New York can talk some sense in an election year for Hochul into Mamdani, and let's see.
I'm gonna build off of that because I agree with you. I think he's gonna hit the brick wall of reality when you can't get $6 billion to fund free childcare and another roughly $1 billion for free buses. But one thing we all can agree on is his messaging matters. It's what got him elected. The substance of it stinks, but his style is good and it's captivating. So I predict if he hits that brick wall, he's going to start messaging, look, it's not me, I'm trying. I'm being thwarted by Republicans, by not true Democrats. And I think that's where the Republicans need to step in and where he might run into some combat.
Let's do it. Tesla. Look at shares of Tesla, everyone. Okay, marginally higher on the day. So we're going to be getting fourth quarter delivery numbers on Friday. They are expected to decline. Curious how my stock market fanatics feel about this stock. It has been a roller coaster ride. It was all tied up with Elon Musk and Doge. Now it's coming back on hopes of not cars, but robotics, humanoids. Personally, I'm super excited about them. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think the line about the deliveries falling, it doesn't matter anymore because you said it rightly, that they're being valued on the future, on robotics, on automation, on self-driving. So I just think, you know, if you look at it purely as an EV company, it doesn't stack up in any measure fundamentally. It shouldn't be trading as high as it is. But that's been the case all along. I've never I traded this short one time successfully and never went back to it again because it trades divorced from the fundamentals.
Yeah, I mean, it was only just a couple of weeks ago. This stock was at a 52-week high, which is a bullish signal, far outpacing Amazon and a lot of those other so-called Mag 7 stocks. But I think, Lou, to your point, exactly right. If they stagnate, it's like if Amazon decided in 2000, well, we're going to be the world's biggest bookstore, and then just gave up at that. It's incumbent on Musk and why you need a good leader, not just to stay in the business that you're dominating, but to innovate. And we all know that robotics will be the new thing. Tesla is being positioned to capitalize on that trend.
Well, that's why it's stupid to have a state wealth tax. You have to do a national wealth tax so people can't move to another state, right? Is that right, Lou?
Please.
You said give them any ideas.
Don't give them any ideas.
Yeah, he said that. He said
No,
it.
I know you don't mean that. But here's the thing, like the messaging hits of soak the rich, soak the rich. But here's the problem. You never soak the rich because capital doesn't stick around to argue about policy. It leaves. You end up draining the ecosystem. Even if California loses one billionaire, like Elon Musk, like it did, or 2 billionaires, it puts a huge strain on the system and makes it worse than it was before. We know this is not going to work out. Again, we've seen it play out time and time again, and you drove home that point in every single instance. It won't
Okay,
work.
but what do you say to Mamdani, who says everyone said that people were going to leave, and guess what? He cites statistics that there are more millionaires today than there were pre-COVID. So it must not be that bad because people aren't leaving that much. That is my worry, is they pull those statistics because there are some people who have not left. There are some people like us who are still here. And I know I'm talking about New York now, not California. But that's a good statistic. So again, I think you need to actually see people leave, because us talking about like, oh, well, Elon Musk quit, that's not enough to move the needle in California. I think you need so many people to walk, or else people like Mamdani are going to pull that statistic of there's still more millionaires today than there were pre-COVID.
No, you need to feel the impact. You're right. You absolutely have to feel the impact.
Here's a little bit of a negative as I'm thinking about next year. I was just scrolling on X last night, and people were responding. We're still waiting for the manufacturing boom. We're still waiting for all of those jobs to come back, for a new manufacturing plant to open. Darren there talked about how sort of manufacturing is sort of still in a recession, right? We haven't really seen all these factories come back. Is that sort of the key sticking point, where the numbers look good, things look good, but you're still waiting for a little bit more of the juice to come through?
On manufacturing, I just think we just got to give up on that, right? We're a 75% service-based economy. Even a big increase in manufacturing is not going to change that mix over time. What I think is going to be most telling is sentiment, right? If you look at the UMich Consumer Sentiment Index, it's lower than it was during the great financial crisis right now. So people are getting told it's going to get better. The economy's great. Things are doing awesome. They just don't feel it yet. So I think if you see a slight uptick, we saw it last month, the first time in 5 months, where people started saying like, okay, economic conditions seem to be getting better. That should show up in January and February if the tax rebates.
I think that's such the interesting dichotomy right now. You've got markets at all-time highs, great year for stocks, but if you ask the average American, I mean, according to Harris, 57% of Americans think that we're in a recession right now, and 55% of Americans say that their own personal economy is worse off now than it was at the beginning of the year. So kind of a fascinating difference between what's happening in the economy and how everyday Americans are actually feeling about the economy.
And I hate to say it, that tracks with what I hear out there, because I'm out, on the street a lot talking to people, and it's three things when you talk about things that cost more. They point to tariffs, which I understand the reason, but that's added to the cost of goods. Immigration, you've deported people that were the source of cheap labor, and this is just talking straight, the source of cheap labor, and so that's driven up costs. And healthcare, you're going to let the premiums go up, and that's going to drive up costs. So while the Democrats get blamed initially for inflation, there's certainly there's reason to look at the current policy as not making it any better.
The tariffs driving up costs is horse manure. And the fact that people are saying that to you means that they are gobbling up left-wing claptrap.
Clearly
it has not added to inflation.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. It's a
brought up
tax.
some costs.
It is a
in some
tax.
goods?
It's a tax, but it's not inflationary.
Yeah, the latest data
Inflation
I
is-
saw was 51% of the tariffs were being absorbed by the companies themselves, another 7 to 8%.
They've
employers.
eaten it.
Who owns the,
Most of it
who
is-
owns
they've
the
eaten it.
companies?
Yeah.
I mean, it comes from
But
Americans.
he's
the tax
talking
has to get
about
paid.
people in the street who say that
the
inflation has
cost of their lives
added to
have gone
their
up.
cost
Yeah.
because of tariffs. Horse,
Stuff.
yes.
I think this is it. This is the difference between soft data and reality. I'll anchor back to what you said earlier on. Personal consumption, consumer spending, right? If you look at the chart of sentiment, it goes up and down like an EKG, but personal spending, consumer spending just keeps going up and to the right. So consumers may say, we don't feel well, we don't think the outlook's good, but we keep spending.
Well, spending went up because things cost more. And
But real.
Yeah, there you go.
So
Well, the inflation rate's lower than it was
Yeah,
when
over
Trump took
the
office.
last 6 years, CPI is up 26%, real wages are up 30%. So we've just outpaced inflation with wages.
You know where he got that?
Larry Kudlow.
You're right, you're absolutely right.
Torsten
Slok.
I wish Brian were here because every time I talk about Torsten Slok, Brian rolls his eyes at me, and I finally now have someone else who agrees with me on reading research.
Brian is not rolling his eyes at you. He's rolling his eyes at me because I can never get the guy's name right. And he's rolling his eyes at me, and then I turn and look at you, and you have to tell me what his name is.
He writes a daily newsletter for Apollo. It's very data driven, so that's why I love it.
Yeah.
Lou, I was a little surprised to hear you say, giving up on manufacturing jobs. Wasn't bringing manufacturing home?
So that's my thing.
This
That's
was the whole
part of
impetus
why
for the
he
Yeah, but
tariff.
it's not going to change the whole balance, right? We're going to get a lot more manufacturing jobs, but it's really not going to change the split of this economy.
No, but
It's
if
always
you're
gonna
in
be
a small
services-based.
town in the Midwest, that changes your life. And I think that's why a lot of people were hoping, and Dag and I have talked about this, I don't need to make a sock, but I'd like to make a high precision chip.
Yeah.
That manufacturing job can create what has now been a desert town back in his thing. I think that people really voted for and hoping that there would be that big renaissance.
Did we
in
raise the
coming back.
expectation as the thing that there would
That's
be
an interesting
those
point.
kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Would we
our
make
expectations
socks
too
again?
high? That's a good question. I think this was not from Torsten Slok. A data point that I think makes sense is that every data center could add 10,000 jobs. So high-skilled labor, civil engineering, all the types of engineering jobs across the board. So it's going to happen, but 10,000 jobs is still a drop in the bucket in the U.S. economy in terms of manufacturing versus service.
I like that. The thing with data centers, though, and Dagan, you've talked about this, is the parking lots are really small because once you build it, you don't need to keep those people employed to keep it running. It's self-sufficient. So you get that initial boost with the construction, but then what? The data center sits there and the parking lot is like 3 cars.
They move on to the next one. There's economies of scale of taking the trained skills workers and moving them to the next data center. And we have 5,500 data centers in the United States. We're probably going to double that in the next 5 to 10 years.
Earnings are outpacing. Individual earnings are outpacing inflation this year by 1.6%. Could it be better? Should it be better? Absolutely. But people's earnings and wages are keeping up and beating inflation. 1. 2, the tariffs. I'm not a fan, obviously, if anyone has watched this show all year, but they are a tax, regardless of what the administration argued in front of the Supreme Court. They are a tax. They're a sliver of a value-added tax, and it's actually a way to extract revenue from individuals who don't pay any federal income tax, which is roughly half the country, pay no net federal income tax. I'm worried that if the Supreme Court unravels them and gets rid of them, then what does that do to longer-term interest rates? Does that put us, if longer-term interest rates go up, the bond market reacts negatively to that. that actually creates another affordability problem
Right.
for housing,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons you fail to mention that that's one of the major reasons that people are unhappy with the economy, and it's an inability to
Wait, let me
buy
get this
a
straight.
home.
You're concerned about lowering a tax on the American people? Wouldn't that be a benefit to the American people if a tax was lowered on them?
In a perfect world, we have a government that has to be funded, even if it's a small government. I prefer a consumption tax over an income tax. I prefer taxing consumption over taxing work.
And that's an interesting point, too, because to your observations, I contend that most Americans don't look month over month, quarter over quarter. They're looking every 2 weeks at my paycheck.
Absolutely.
How much came in? How much do I have left? And that buffer's not big enough yet of what they have left. So they feel like, hey, things are not as good. It's tariffs, whatever you point the finger at, until we see that, where there's a tangible impact every 2 weeks on the paycheck.
I wanted
what
to
you have
ask
at
this
home.
question on tariffs. Should a president, any president, have the ability to impose these kinds of tariffs by just simply declaring an emergency? Do we want the next president to have that authority?
Well, that's the question in front of the Supreme Court.
What do you
Whether he
think?
used the
You're on the Supreme Court.
no.
You're one of the Supremes. Nice
If
dress.
it's
How do
national
I
emergency.
think the court will rule?
What do you think?
I think that they're a tax, and I think that using IEPA to impose them, the power to tax is with Congress.
And interestingly, the stock market rally actually really picked up steam once those tariffs were actually rescinded. So, lowering taxes on Americans. And ironically, we're always so worried about the least fortunate of all Americans. They're the ones that are most hurt by the tariffs. They're the ones for an extra 20 or 30% on goods. And it's not just foreign goods. Keep in mind, a lot of domestic manufacturers, because you eliminate the foreign competition, they raise prices as well. So, Dagan, we can't.
How much have they? It has not happened.
Here's my thing. I think the bark of the tariffs has been much worse than the bite, right? We started at 83%, we brought it back down. I've said and contended from the day one, the president was using this as a negotiating tactic, and he put urgency in play by saying, hey, here's the new rate. It's at 83%. He never intended to enact that, and then we get to a more reasonable one. No one would come to the table and negotiate if he didn't do that. The prices and the data shows it hasn't led to widespread increases. Even Jerome Powell had to admit that. I'm sitting around waiting for the impact. I'm sitting around waiting for the impact. Oops, it didn't show.
Your beef prices are not higher because of tariffs, regardless of what the left is telling you. It's because the herds are smaller.
According to one study, 75% of the people who earn minimum wage within a year are making more than the minimum wage. So this is an entry-level spot where most people start, not a spot where most people end up.
I'm amazed minimum wage is going to be at $30. I remember making $5.05 an hour as minimum wage. Here, I'm trying to be devil's advocate, play the other side. I think this is a vote getter. That's really purely what it is. Because if I'm the employee that goes from making $10 to $20 or $20 to $30 an hour, I feel that. I see that impact. Even if the price of that burger goes up, I don't really see that much. It's not as immediately tangible as that $30 per hour wage increase. And then, therefore, there's loyalty. They don't have to worry about the consequences. The politicians are not worried about that business consequences. But it's just like the Yankee great Yogi Berra said. It's deja vu all over again. We've gone through this with California. Look at every single study or state where they've raised the minimum wage. It leads to businesses slowing down hiring or going out of business, which then no one has a job.
I mean, we got a national minimum wage. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, if you're minimum wage in New York, it's not minimum wage in the middle of South Dakota.
On a deeper level, I worry about the American dream because we started using a euphemism for minimum wage and a living wage. These jobs weren't supposed to be a living wage. It's supposed to be an entry point, like you said. As a high schooler, you're going in and bagging groceries, right?
Yeah.
By putting that label on it, we're now creating this perception that you should be able to live by just being a grocery bagger forever. No, the American dream is to start somewhere. All of our, parents, descendants of immigrants came here. Give me anything just to get my foot in the door and get an opportunity.
No one I know calls it that.
Yeah, but it's out there. I mean, it's been put out in the
Like who,
ecosystem.
Bernie?
Well,
No, by the Democrats. I mean, this was very popular a couple years ago, but I think it's now become synonymous with this. What people think, the perception is minimum wage, I should be able to afford everything.
And
No,
it
you
impacts
can't.
everyone's wage. I mean, if the minimum guy is now making $30 an hour and you are making $35 and you've been there for 5 or 10 years, then you expect your wage to be increased. Now, nothing against increasing wages, but this isn't coming from economic reality. It's not like the companies become more productive and the has more profits to hand out. This is coming from government edict, and that's why it always fails and always results in jobs being lost, particularly for those low-skill, low-income individuals.
So I'm hoping that they follow the data. And let's see. Now, in the last meeting minutes that we got yesterday from the December meeting where they cut for the third straight time in a row, they did say that upside risks to inflation had moderated while they were increasingly concerned about downside risks to the labor market. I like that, and that supports the view that they could continue cutting interest rates.
Opposing views?
I would agree. I mean, you look at it right now, the next Fed meeting's in January. After that, you have nothing in February. And then March, I think it's, kind of middle of March. When the Fed starts cutting, they tend to keep on that path, right? So we saw that 50 basis point cut right ahead of the election. I don't see any way you could say that wasn't biased and non-independent. But now we've seen just very consistent 25 basis points, 25 basis points. I think you have the air cover with inflation moderating that you can cut another 25 basis points. Remember, this is not one cut here, one cut there completely collapses the economy, or rebounds the economy. It's not that precise of a tool. So I think the Fed continues on its path. One more cut and then holds tight after that.
I mean, you look at the 2-year right now, I don't know if the Fed really, the 2-year is right.
347.
Yeah, it's right where the Fed funds rate is.
Finally.
Maybe they can cut one more time, but that's...
I think if they're data dependent, they cut one more time and see what happens with the labor market. So you've seen, if we go back...
That's right where the Fed funds rate is.
If we
right
go
now.
back to 2022, the economy was adding an average of about 350,000 jobs a month. We're down to 55,000. So the Fed is right that the labor market has cooled. Is it about the crater? We don't know, but I think they would rather take some insurance out, one more cut, and then pause and see where the data comes in. If you look at the inflation, though, it's still persistent, but it's persistent in the categories that are structural, not demand-driven. So it's
Like
real
I
estate,
mentioned,
energy, healthcare. Those all have to be
Some food
addressed.
groups.
Yes, those all have to be addressed by reforms to regulations, not a change in market dynamics. So I think inflation is at least maybe a little bit higher than target, but is stabilized.
I like that there is more dissent. I don't think it means that the Fed chair has lost control. The Fed chair has one vote and only one. And so I like that avoids groupthink and provides a diverse set of views at the table.
Nobody's worried about bias.
We
Is
also,
that right?
Well, I think to Dagan's point, the bias gets corrected really quickly. I think this is one of those jobs in America, once you get into the position, you realize, I don't have a choice. What my bias was, I have to be independent, otherwise I'm going to be punished accordingly. I think that happens.
$1
I would tell you,
million worth.
No, listen, I'll tell you this. Insider only buys for one reason, as Peter Lynch said. It's because they believe the price is going up. So it's a bullish signal anytime an insider buys. But when a cluster of insiders start buying, so we had Tim Cook, who's on the board of Nike. Remember, he made his first insider purchase of 50,000 shares. So to me, this is... I don't get into the apparel space. I'm contemplating a purchase here because these are two well-known insiders that have more information than we do saying, we're putting our money where our mouth is and we think the stock's going higher.
I forgot about Tim Cook, who's on the board. Yeah.
But is it like a Warren Buffett type move where just by the big name getting into it, he's trying to help here?
Well, it's going to be up to Nike.
I think maybe this time around they see their turnaround plan starting to take shape. And they're betting on themselves.
You got to keep in mind, there's very narrow windows for insiders to buy. It only opens 3 to 4 days after quarterly reports are filed. So they don't have many opportunities. They have plenty of opportunities to sell, but not necessarily buy.
Are we more angry that this is just big government in the housing? Are we angry that most of this fraud is going to New York, California, Washington, D.C.? Are we more upset that it's going to dead people? Where do I begin?
I'm really upset it's going to dead people and all this fraud even happens because here's why. It's so easily avoided. In this digital age, we should have digital checks and balances. A check's going to go out, Social Security check, a HUD assistance check. Is that person dead? There should be a death certificate in the system that matches up with a Social Security number. It's very straightforward. If we can figure out blockchain and cancer immunotherapies, we should be able to figure out an accounting system for where government and tax dollars go.
Yeah, but should the check go out? I mean, $50 billion for rental assistance? I mean, I know it makes me sound like a bit of a Scrooge here, but government is not a charity. Government is a gun.
Yeah.
And its role is not to provide you food, healthcare, education, medicine, everything. a cradle to grave, once again, entitlement state. So I'm, for one, no more subsidies.
I get triggered by the word trigger, and I have a resolution not to make resolutions because you just don't ever keep them. But I'm along the lines of live in the present. You don't know the moments. Having lost a loved one is live in the moment and know what you can control and what you can't, and then just adjust. Expect the unexpected.
Hey,